Look, if you're over 50, you've already made most of the mistakes you're going to make. The question now is, can you stop making them long enough to actually retire with dignity? Charlie Munger lived to 99. He had nearly 50 years of investing after turning 50. And you know what he figured out during that time? That being over 50 is either your greatest advantage or your final countdown to financial disaster. There's no middle ground anymore. Here's what nobody will tell you. If you're 50 or older and you don't have this one thing figured out, you're screwed. Not might be screwed, not probably screwed. Definitely screwed. You'll work until you're 75, cut pills in half, and burden your kids with your financial incompetence. But if you get this one investment tip right, the one Charlie lived by after 50, you can still build enough wealth to retire comfortably, maybe even early, not through some magic stock pick or crypto gamble, through one simple principle that works for everyone, but requires something most people over 50 don't have: the discipline to admit they've been wrong and change immediately. This will take 50 minutes of your time. If you can't invest 50 minutes to potentially save your retirement, you've already lost. Let's go. Here's Charlie's #1 investment tip for people over 50. Stop playing offense and start playing defense. Stop trying to hit home runs. Stop looking for the next big thing. Your job now is to protect what you have and let it compound without interruption. You see, when you're 25, you can afford to take risks. You can lose 50% of your portfolio and have 40 years to recover. When you're 50, you don't have that luxury. Lose 50% now, and you might never recover. Not mathematically, psychologically. But psychologically, you probably won't make it either. But that's not what you're doing, is it? You're still acting like you're 30, still chasing growth stocks, still convinced you're going to find the next Amazon, still trading options and gambling on earnings reports. And this behavior is going to destroy you. Not might. Will. Let me show you the math. Say you're 50 with $300,000 saved. If you invest it conservatively and earn 6% annually, you'll have about $575,000 by 65. Not exciting, but combined with Social Security, probably enough to retire. But what if you take risks trying to catch up because you feel behind? Let's say you go aggressive and you're doing great, earning 12% annually. Fantastic. Until year 8, when you lose 40% in a crash, now your $300,000 is worth about $425,000 instead of the $525,000 it would have been with the conservative approach. Worse, you probably panic sold during that crash, locking in losses. Then you waited to get back in and missed the recovery. Now you have $300,000 at age 58, right where you started. You wasted 8 years. This is what happens to people over 50 who don't shift to defense. They chase returns, get burned, panic, and destroy their timeline. Then they're 65 with nothing saved and no time left. Here's what Charlie actually did after 50. He got more conservative, not less. He focused on preservation first, growth second. He bought businesses with durable competitive advantages that wouldn't blow up. He diversified more. He worried less about beating the market and more about not losing to stupidity. And here's what you do instead. You watch CNBC and get FOMO about whatever stock is up 50% this month. You convince yourself you're behind and need big gains to catch up. You take risks you can't afford because you're embarrassed about how little you've saved. Let me tell you about someone who got this wrong. A guy I knew, age 52, had $400,000 saved. Felt like it wasn't enough. Put half of it into high-growth tech stocks and crypto in 2021. I need to make up for lost time, he said. By 2023, That $200,000 was worth about $60,000. He didn't just lose money. He lost time. He can't get back. Now he's 54 with $260,000 total, and he needs to work another 15 years minimum. If he'd just left everything in balanced funds, he'd have about $440,000 now and be on track to retire at 65. The math on this is brutal. Every year after 50 that you lose money is a year you can't recover. At 30, losing a year is annoying. At 55, losing a year might mean working until 70 instead of 65. That's 5 extra years of your life. Your healthy years gone because you couldn't accept that defense beats offense after 50. Here's the principle. Capital preservation is more important than capital appreciation when you're over 50. This doesn't mean earn zero returns. It means your priority is not losing, not winning big. Let me give you another example. 2 people, both 50, both with $500,000 saved. Person A invests conservatively. 60% bonds, 40% stock index funds, earns about 5-6% annually with low volatility. Person B stays aggressive. 100% stocks, some individual picks, some options trading, earns 10% in good years but loses 30% in bad years. Over 15 years to age 65, person A ends up with about $1 million, boring but reliable. Person B could end up with $1.5 million if lucky, or $400,000 if unlucky. The problem is you don't know which until it's too late. And if you're unlucky at 65, you're screwed. Charlie understood this. He said, "It's waiting that helps you as an investor, and a lot of people just can't stand to wait." After 50, waiting and protecting is your strategy. Not trading, not chasing. Protecting and waiting. Your action today. Look at your portfolio right now. Calculate what percentage is in high-risk assets. Individual stocks, crypto, options, leveraged ETFs, anything that could drop 50% in a crash. If that number is over 30% and you're over 50, you're taking too much risk. Start shifting to a more defensive allocation. You don't have time to recover from a major loss anymore. Why people over 50 make the worst investment decisions. Here's what's happening to most of you over 50. You're making investment decisions based on fear and regret instead of logic and mathematics. And it's destroying you. You're afraid you haven't saved enough, afraid you'll never be able to retire, afraid you'll be a burden. So what do? You take bigger risks to make up for lost time. And you lose what little you have. This is the exact opposite of what you should do. When you're behind, you don't take more risk. You accept reality, get your spending under control, maybe work a few extra years, and protect what you have. But that requires humility most people don't have. Let me tell you what actually causes financial disaster after 50. It's not market crashes. It's not bad luck. It's emotional decision-making driven by fear and ego. Fear that you're behind makes you chase returns. Fear of missing out makes you buy Bitcoin at $60,000. Fear of being ordinary makes you try to pick stocks instead of buying index funds. And all of this fear-based behavior destroys wealth. Here's a real example from 2008. The market crashed. People in their 50s and 60s panicked and sold everything. The S&P 500 dropped 57% from peak to trough. If you sold at the bottom in March 2009, you locked in a 57% loss. But if you held, you recovered everything by 2012. And if you kept holding, you made massive gains. From March 2009 to today, the market is up over 700%. But most people over 50 didn't get those gains. They sold in panic and either never got back in or got back in way too late. Why? Because they made decisions based on fear instead of logic. They saw their $500,000 become $250,000 and couldn't handle it psychologically. Never mind that they didn't need the money for 10 or 15 years. Never mind that selling locked in losses. They panicked, and it destroyed them. Charlie's philosophy on this was simple. The big money is not in the buying and selling, but in the waiting. But waiting requires emotional control, and most people over 50 don't have it because they're scared. Here's another pattern I see constantly. People over 50 who try to be stock pickers. They watch CNBC, read about some hot stock, convince themselves they understand it, and buy it. Then it drops 40%, and they don't know whether to hold or sell because they never understood it in the first place. Let me give you an example. A woman I knew, age 56, read about Peloton during COVID. Everyone's buying these bikes. This is the future. She put $50,000 into Peloton stock at $130 per share in late 2020. Peloton topped at $107, then crashed to under $10. Her $50,000 became about $3,000. That loss, $47,000 at age 56, is devastating. That money invested conservatively for 9 years until age 65 would have been worth about $80,000. She destroyed her retirement because she thought she could pick stocks. And here's what you're probably thinking, but I'm different. I understand markets. I've been investing for years. No, you don't. And no, you haven't. Not successfully. If you had, you wouldn't be watching this video hoping for the secret to saving your retirement. The math on stock picking after 50 is devastating. Studies show that professional investors, people with teams of analysts, decades of experience, unlimited research budgets, can't beat index funds consistently. And you think you can do it working part-time from your home office? Let me show you what this costs. Say you have $400,000 at age 50. If you put it in an S&P 500 index fund earning 8% annually, you'll have about $865,000 at 65. If you try to pick stocks and underperform the market by just 2% annually, which is optimistic for most people, you'll have about $720,000. You cost yourself $145,000 by thinking you're smart, and that's the optimistic scenario. Most individual investors underperform by 3 to 4% annually. At 4% underperformance, your $400,000 becomes $620,000 instead of $865,000. You gave away $245,000 trying to be a stock picker. Here's what Charlie actually believed. Knowing what you don't know is more useful than being brilliant. After 50, this becomes critical. You need to admit what you don't know and stick to what works. Index funds, diversification, low fees, boring strategies that have worked for decades, but you won't do that because it requires admitting you're not special, and that's painful. So you'll keep trying to beat the market, keep underperforming, and wonder why your retirement gets further away every year. Your action, if you've been picking individual stocks, calculate your actual returns over the past 5 years. Not what you think they are, what they actually are. Compare that to what you would have made in an S&P 500 index fund. If you underperformed, which you probably did, stop picking stocks immediately. Your ego is costing you your retirement. Here's what you should actually be doing with your money after 50. Boring, simple asset allocation that protects capital first and grows it second. The old rule was 100 minus your age in stocks. So at age 50, you'd have 50% stocks, 50% bonds. At 60, you'd have 40% stocks, 60% bonds. Simple, straightforward, conservative, but people think this is too conservative now. I'll live to 95. I need growth. So they stay aggressive, take too much risk, and get destroyed in crashes. Then they have to work until they're 75 because they couldn't accept that boring works. Let me give you the allocation that actually works for people over 50, 60% stock index funds, 30% bond index funds, 10% cash. Adjust slightly based on your specific situation, But this is the baseline. Why this allocation? Because it gives you growth from stocks, stability from bonds, and safety from cash. And it's defensive enough that a market crash won't destroy you. When stocks drop 40%, your portfolio might drop 24%. Painful, but survivable. And with bonds and cash, you don't have to sell stocks at the bottom to fund expenses. Here's the math on why this matters. Say you're 55 with $500,000 and this allocation. Market crashes 40%. Your stocks, 60% or $300,000 drop to $180,000. Your bonds might drop 10% to $270,000 from $300,000. Your cash stays at $50,000. Total portfolio, $500,000. That's a 20% loss. Brutal to watch, but not devastating. And because you have bonds and cash, you can spend from those while stocks recover. You don't have to sell stocks at the bottom. Compare this to being 100% in stocks. Same crash. Your $500,000 becomes $300,000. Now you're down 40%, and if you need to spend money, you're selling at a loss. This is how people destroy their retirement. They're forced to sell during crashes because they have no defensive positions. But here's what you actually do. You're 100% stocks because you think you're aggressive. Or you're 80% stocks, 20% bonds because 60-40 seems too conservative. Then the market crashes and you panic. You weren't as risk tolerant as you thought. You sell everything. You lock in losses. Game over. Let me tell you about someone who got this right. A couple, both 52, had $600,000 saved in 2007. They were allocated 60% stocks, 40% bonds, and cash. When 2008 hit, their portfolio dropped from $600,000 to about $480,000. Painful. But they didn't panic. They spent from their bonds and cash. Didn't touch the stocks. By 2013, their portfolio recovered to $720,000. They're now 68, with about $1.4 million. They retired at 65 comfortably. Why? Because they were defensive enough to survive the crash without panic selling. Meanwhile, their friends who were 100% stocks, many of them sold during the crash, locked in losses, missed the recovery. They're still working at 68. Here's Charlie's philosophy on asset allocation. The wise ones bet heavily when the world offers them that opportunity. They bet big when they have the odds. And the rest of the time they don't. It's just that simple. After 50, the odds favor defense, not offense. So you bet on defense. But what about inflation? What about growth? What about stop? You're making excuses because you don't want to accept that boring works. A 60-40 portfolio has historically returned 7 to 8% annually. That's enough to grow your wealth and protect against inflation. It's not exciting, but it works. Let me show you the math over 15 years from age 50 to 65. Starting with $500,000, conservative 60-40 allocation at 7% annually, to $1.38 million aggressive 100% stocks at 9% annually, but you panic sell once and lock in a 30% loss. Shamuk $1.1 million. The conservative allocation ends up with more money because you didn't panic. This is what people don't understand. The aggressive approach looks better on paper, but human behavior, panic selling, emotional decisions destroys the theoretical returns. The defensive approach keeps you invested through crashes, which is where wealth is built. Your action: rebalance your portfolio to something defensive. If you're 50-55, consider 60% stocks, 30% bonds, 10% cash. If you're 55-60, maybe 50% stocks, 40% bonds, 10% cash. If you're over 60, even more conservative. This isn't exciting, but it might save your retirement. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people over 50 don't have an investment problem. They have a spending problem. And no investment strategy can fix that. You can't out-invest overspending. You can't earn your way out of a lifestyle that costs more than you make. If you're 50 and spending everything you earn, you're screwed no matter what returns you get. Let me give you the numbers. The average American spends about $70,000, $80,000 per year on everything: housing, food, transportation, entertainment, everything. If you want to retire and maintain that lifestyle, you need about $1.75 million saved using the 4% rule. Do you have $1.75 million saved at 50? Most people don't. Most people have $100,000 to $300,000 if they're lucky, which means one of two things has to happen. Either you save aggressively for the next 15 years, or you cut your spending dramatically. But you won't do either, will you? You'll keep spending, keep undersaving, and hope somehow it works out. It won't. Here's what Charlie actually did. He lived well below his means his entire life. He was worth billions but lived in the same house for decades. Drove normal cars, didn't waste money on status symbols. Why? Because he understood that every dollar spent is a dollar that can't compound. And here's what you do. You lease cars you can't afford. You live in houses that are too expensive. You take vacations on credit cards. You're bleeding money everywhere, then wondering why you can't retire. Let me tell you about someone who figured this out at 53. He was making $120,000 per year, spending $115,000, saving almost nothing. Had maybe $150,000 saved total, realized at 53 that he was headed for disaster. He cut his spending to $75,000 per year. Painful cuts, smaller house, no new cars, fewer vacations, but he was saving $45,000 per year. In 12 years, by age 65, he saved $540,000 plus growth. Combined with his existing $150,000, he had about $850,000, enough to retire. Could he have done this by investing better? No. Even if he got 15% returns instead of 8%, the difference would have been maybe $200,000. The spending cut saved him $540,000 in cash, plus all the compound growth. Spending was the leverage point, not investing. The math on this is brutal. If you're 50 and spending $80,000 per year, cutting that to $60,000 gives you $20,000 more to save annually. Over 15 years at 7% returns, that's $506,000. That's the difference between retiring and not retiring for most people. But cutting spending requires admitting your lifestyle is unsustainable, requires making hard choices, requires being different from your friends and neighbors, and most people would rather work until 75 than make those changes. Here's another uncomfortable truth. If you're over 50 and deep in debt, you're in serious trouble. Credit card debt, car loans, home equity loans. Every dollar of debt is working against you, not for you. And the interest on that debt is destroying any investment gains you make. Let me show you. Say you have $200,000 invested, earning 7%. That's $14,000 per year in gains. But you also have $50,000 in credit card debt at 18% interest. That's costing you $9,000 per year. Your net gain is $5,000. You're basically running in place. If you paid off the debt, your $200,000 would actually be growing, but you won't pay off the debt because that requires sacrifice. So you'll keep paying 18% interest while hoping your investments return 20%. It's mathematically stupid. Here's what you should actually do if you're over 50 with debt. Stop investing and pay off the debt. I know that sounds wrong, but think about it. Paying off 18% debt is a guaranteed 18% return. You're not going to get a guaranteed 18% return in the stock market. Your action. Track every dollar you spend for 1 month. Every coffee, every subscription, every impulse purchase. At the end, categorize it. How much is essential? How much is just habit? Cut 20–30% of the non-essential spending and start investing that money. And if you have high-interest debt, stop investing entirely and attack the debt first. Here's something most people over 50 screw up: when to take Social Security. And this decision alone can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can take Social Security as early as 62, but if you do, your benefit is reduced by about 30% compared to waiting until full retirement age at 67. And if you wait until 70, your benefit increases by about 24% compared to taking it at 67. So for every year you delay between 62 and 70, your benefit increases significantly. Simple math says wait as long as possible, right? But most people don't wait. They take it at 62 or 63 because they need the money now, or they're afraid the system will go broke, or they want to enjoy it while they're young. And all of these reasons are emotionally driven and mathematically stupid. Let me show you the math. Say your full retirement benefit at 67 is $2,500 per month. If you take it at 62, you get about that's $950 per month. If you wait until 70, you get about $300 per month. Taking it at 62 means you get $750 per month for life. Taking it at 70 means you wait 8 years, but then get $100 per month for life. The break-even point is around age 80. If you live past 80, waiting was worth it. If you die before 80, taking it early was better. But here's what people don't consider. Most 62-year-olds will live past 80. Life expectancy for someone who makes it to 62 is about 85, 90. So waiting is probably the right financial decision for most people. The difference in lifetime benefits is massive. Let's say you live to 85. Take it 62, get $1,750 a month for 23 years, $483,000 total. Take it 70, get $300 a month for 15 years, a $558,000 total. You get $75,000 more by waiting. And if you live to 90, the difference is even larger, over $150,000. But here's what you'll probably do. Take it early because you're impatient or scared. Then you'll spend it on current expenses instead of saving it. And you'll end up with less money in retirement because you couldn't wait 5 to 8 years. Charlie's philosophy on this would be simple. Do the math, not the emotion. If the math says wait, wait. If you need the money at 62, you have a spending problem, not an income problem. Let me tell you about someone who got this right. He was 62, wanted to retire, didn't have quite enough saved. He could have taken Social Security and retired immediately. But he ran the numbers. If he worked part-time for 3 more years, saved more, and waited until 65 to take Social Security, he'd be much better off long-term. So that's what he did. Worked part-time, age 62, 65, saved an extra $75,000, delayed Social Security from 62 to 65, increasing his benefit, and retired at 65 with a much more comfortable situation. The 3 extra years of working set him up for 20-plus years of better retirement. But most people won't do this. They'll take the money as soon as possible because delayed gratification is hard. Then they'll live on less for the rest of their lives because they couldn't wait. Here's another consideration. If you're married, the decision gets more complex. The higher-earning spouse should almost certainly wait until 70 because their benefit becomes the survivor benefit. When one spouse dies, the survivor gets the higher of the 2 benefits. So maximizing the higher benefit protects the surviving spouse. But most couples don't think about this. Both spouses take benefits early. Then when one dies, the survivor is stuck with a reduced benefit for the rest of their life. This can be the difference between a comfortable widow or widower and a struggling one. Your action? If you're approaching 62, run the numbers on when to take Social Security. Use the calculators on SSA.gov. Consider your health, your savings, your spending needs. For most people, waiting until at least 67 is the right move, and waiting until 70 is even better, if you can afford it. Don't make this decision emotionally. Here's what will actually bankrupt you after 50. Healthcare costs. Not market crashes, not inflation, healthcare. The average 65-year-old couple will spend about $315,000 on healthcare in retirement. That's not including long-term care, which can add another $200,000, $400,000. So we're talking about $500,000, $700,000 in total healthcare spending from age 65 until death. Do you have $500,000, $700,000 earmarked for healthcare? Probably not, which means you're either going to go broke, burden your kids, or die early because you can't afford treatment. Those are your options if you don't plan for this. And if you retire before 65, before Medicare kicks in, it's even worse. Private health insurance for a couple in their early 60s can cost $2,000 to $3,000 per month. That's $24,000, $36,000 per year. For 5 years, until Medicare, that's $120,000, $180,000. Can your retirement plan absorb that? Most people's retirement plans collapse between 60 and 65 because they didn't account for health care. They quit their job, lose their employer insurance, and suddenly health care costs destroy their budget. They end up going back to work just for the insurance. Here's what you need to understand. Health care costs are the biggest unplanned expense in retirement, and they're getting worse, not better. Insurance premiums are rising faster than inflation. Drug costs are skyrocketing. Long-term care is insanely expensive. Let me give you a real example. A couple retired at 62 with $800,000 saved. They planned to live on $50,000 per year from their investments. They thought they had it figured out. Then they got hit with health care. $20,500 per month for insurance until Medicare at 65. That's $30,000 per year, or 60% of their planned spending budget. Suddenly, their $50,000 per year plan required $80,000 per year. Their $800,000 wouldn't last. They had to go back to work. The husband got a job that offered health insurance. They ended up working until 65 just to avoid the health care costs. 5 years of their retirement gone because they didn't plan for health care. Here's the math on long-term care. The average nursing home costs about $100,000 per year. The average stay is 2 to 3 years. So we're talking $200,000, $300,000. If both spouses need care at different times, double that. Most people think Medicare covers this. It doesn't. Medicare covers skilled nursing care for short periods, not long-term custodial care. Medicaid covers it if you're broke, but you have to spend down all your assets first. So your choice is either pay for it yourself or impoverish yourself to qualify for Medicaid. Long-term care insurance can help, but it's expensive and has limitations. A policy for a couple in their 50s might cost $5,000, $8,000 per year. But it's probably worth it compared to the alternative of paying $100,000 per year out of pocket later. Here's Charlie's philosophy. Plan for the worst and hope for the best. You need to assume health care will cost more than you think. Build that into your plan. Don't just hope you'll stay healthy. Hope is not a plan. And here's what you'll probably do. Ignore this until it's too late. You'll retire without adequate health care planning. Then you'll get sick, face enormous bills, and watch your retirement savings evaporate. Or you'll skip treatments because you can't afford them, or you'll burden your kids with your medical expenses. Your action. If you're planning to retire before 65, research health insurance costs right now. Get actual quotes for your age and location. Add that to your retirement budget. If the numbers don't work, You might need to work until 65 and research long-term care insurance. Get quotes. Decide if it makes sense for you. This isn't optional. It's the difference between a comfortable retirement and financial ruin. The one thing you must do right now. Look, here's the bottom line. If you're over 50, you're running out of time to fix your financial situation. Not out of time completely, but the margin for error is shrinking every year. Charlie's #1 investment tip after 50 is simple. Stop playing offense, start playing defense. Protect what you have. Live below your means. Cut spending, pay off debt. Build a conservative portfolio. Plan for health care. Delay Social Security if possible. None of this is sexy. None of it will make you feel smart or impress your friends. But it works. It's worked for decades. It'll work for you if you actually do it. But here's what most of you will do. Nothing. You'll watch this video, maybe nod your head a few times, then go back to exactly what you were doing before. Spending too much. Investing too aggressively. Hoping somehow it all works out. It won't work out. Not on its own. You have to make it work out by making hard decisions and sticking to them. The people who succeed after 50 aren't the ones who made perfect decisions in their 20s and 30s. They're the ones who recognized their mistakes at 50 and had the discipline to change, to cut spending, to get conservative, to stop chasing returns and start protecting capital. You can still retire comfortably if you're 50, but only if you change immediately. Not next month, not next year, today. Now, if you want more brutal honesty about building wealth and actually retiring, not fantasies about getting rich quick, subscribe to this channel. We're not here to make you feel good. We're here to tell you what works, but only if you can handle the truth.